breaking up with a narcissist is easier said than done. At the beginning, things would have been great. They would have made you feel great. They would have idealized you, love bombed you, told you just the things you wanted to hear, and you would have felt really good by all that. Maybe you would have felt that you met your soulmate. High hopes until things start to get real. It doesn't take that much time for the cracks to really start showing themselves. If you pay attention, some cracks, red flags, show themselves as early as the first few days, but over the course of the next weeks, months, there are certainly heavy doses of that truthness, of their true colors coming through, and you really start to feel that. So if you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, let's say it started very well, but after a few weeks, a few months, you realize, look, this isn't what I've signed up for. They clearly don't care about you. They take you for granted. The emotional support that you thought you might get from this person is absent. It just seems like they're the only one that matters in the relationship. Once you start to realize all that, you might come to this conclusion that A, you might want to break up and leave them, or B, you might want to communicate to them how you're feeling, being truthful, because maybe you want to salvage the relationship. Or C, you might decide you want to break up, but you'll give them the explanation just so they have that, just so they understand why you left and where things were. When you reach that point where you're either stepping away or completely opening up to the narcissist and being truthful about how you feel, they, in the back of their mind, they're convinced you're not going to leave them yet. They might have to do a bit of damage control, but you're not going to leave them yet. So when you explain to them, let's say you explain to them how you've been feeling, taken for granted, that the emotional connection that you thought you could get from them is just absent. It's kind of like dealing with a brick wall who just doesn't care. If you communicate that to them, they'll immediately respond saying, look, thank you so much for being open and honest. I'm very sorry that this is how you've been feeling. It hasn't been my intention to make you feel that way. Let's make it better. We can work together to make it better. And basically, they'll show all the support, and they'll all of a sudden make you think that, okay, things are going to get better. We've had that conversation. Things are out there. Maybe I don't need to leave this person. So you start trusting them again. You get your hopes up again that this relationship is worthwhile. There's a future to it. Of course, that's just the narcissist damage control. That's just telling them telling you exactly what you want to hear to stick around. And that's all narcissists do. They don't ever communicate any version of truth. They communicate whatever they must in the most truthful manner that they can come across to achieve their agenda. In this case, is to have you around because they're not ready for you to leave yet. So you do stick around. Maybe for the first 2 or 3 days afterwards, things seem to be somewhat better. But it probably won't take more than a week or two, a few weeks for you to start seeing the old person again. And, after a few weeks, months, certainly all you see again is that old version, or the version of the narcissist which you are unhappy with. Someone who just uses you to serve them, uses you to regulate them, uses you and uses you. When they're upset, they'll just throw garbage your way. So you kind of feel a bit more upset than them, and all of a sudden they feel a bit better. Or where you're feeling great and all of a sudden they suffer narcissistic injury because you're feeling better than them, they'll attack you. They'll be condescending. They'll do something to bring your mood down. It's all about keeping them right where they need to be. So all that stuff comes back and it becomes the norm again. And then if you reach that point again where you decide, okay, I'm either going to leave or have that chat again with them, this isn't working. Over time, when again you decide you want to leave the relationship, and let's say the narcissist doesn't want you to leave yet, they still want you to stick around, they still need you. This time, if you communicate your concerns and your worries and your truth to them, The second time around, the third time around, they're not going to be so easygoing in their response. What they'll do at that point, most likely, they'll start, they will try to be understanding. They'll listen to what you have to say, but they might blame shift a little bit and kind of make you feel like the problem. They might make you believe, oh, you are a little bit too sensitive, don't you think? And they might give some examples about where you're too sensitive. Or they might make some excuses. Maybe they've been very busy with their job, or they've had a problem with a family member, so they've been distracted. So they'll get creative in ways to kind of detach themselves of any blame, of any responsibility, accountability for the things that you're trying to open up with them about. And at that point they'll start shifting some of that back to you, or shifting the blame on other people or situations like their job or family members. And narcissists are so good with that kind of chat, that conversation about always trying to uphold the image of somebody who's wholesome, truthful, whatnot, that it's very likely that you would leave that conversation or that encounter thinking, you know what, maybe they are right. I am a bit too sensitive, because they gave some examples about maybe where you overreacted about a few things, and then maybe it would be like, okay, well, actually, he does have a point, or she does have a point. They are very busy. They have a lot on their plate, and everything kind of there's plausible deniability about everything. And narcissists are very good at making you feel bad for even complaining about anything of that nature. So if they succeed in delivering their response to you in just the right way, they might have you scratching your head thinking, oh, maybe you're in the wrong. You get into this zone of confusion, this kind of dissonance where you feel like you're in the wrong, but at the same time you're like, yeah, but these things that are happening shouldn't be happening. So it sets you in that very confusing place. And if you were not already confused enough from before that, this can kind of stun you in a sense where you don't really want to make any big decisions for a while, because you have a lack of clarity, and it's never good to make important decisions when you're in that zone of lack of clarity. So most likely, so the narcissist responds in all that way just to make sure that you stick around at least for another few months, maybe a year. That they come across in just the right way to put you into that mindset where you're still probably not going to go away anytime soon. But if the relationship continues and you try to make it work, you try to gain more clarity, and let's say you reach the point where you just say you've had enough. Enough's enough. You just can't handle it anymore. And let's say maybe 6 months later you decide you're leaving. At that point, you probably are somewhat unhinged, because that would have been induced by them on you. At that point, you're probably feeling a bit imbalanced. The narcissist will step up their game, and if you're leaving them, and they're still not ready for you to leave, they're not shy from making you feel very bad, or playing some very strong cards against you. They'll say things like, you're going to leave me, but you're going to regret it. Nobody's going to love you as much as I have. You don't appreciate everything I've done for you. I've been there when you needed me most. They'll threaten to smear your name, telling people, maybe your friends, family, how unhinged you are, and explain the breakup was because you've had your own issues, that you're not stable. And they'll say it in such a way where you almost believe they're right, because they made you feel so confused and unhinged, because they always want to be the one who's in that position of more clarity. If you own a house together, if you're married with kids, pets, all that, they'll make you think that you're going to lose all that or most of that by leaving them. They'll play any card that they can to guilt trip or scare you into sticking around even longer, because nothing should happen on somebody else's watch that's important to them. If somebody's going to leave them, it should happen on their watch, not yours. So the narcissists get a bit dirty at that point. Because they just can't they just can't accept that someone is able to leave them and just cut that tie with them. They can't accept that. And they always play the response in the way that's most likely to keep the person around. And obviously over time, as the person gets to know them better and better and gets more and more frustrated and more adamant about their decision to potentially leave, the narcissist also ups their game, and they get a bit dirty and sneaky about guilt tripping you, instilling fear in you. And sometimes they can keep their supply around for a lifetime because of that. That happens a lot. These doormat supplies is because narcissists weaken the target so much the target doesn't feel they can make it on their own. And that's how they control people. So when you're with somebody who you think is mentally unhealthy, the best thing to do is to leave early on in the relationship, before the red flags. Early on in the relationship when you've seen a lot of the red flags, but don't keep sticking around, because the longer you stay with them, the stronger the emotional bond, right? The weaker you feel, because they weaken you over time, the more confused you feel, and the higher the stakes, because over time you tend to build assets together. You build a life together. You buy a house together, you might get married, you might have children. It gets really difficult after you have all that to leave. So, important message is, if you're even listening to this video, or if you're even reading about narcissism, then you know enough to identify the red flags. Don't excuse them away. It's okay to initially put some trust in the wrong person, but when the red flags are clear, that's your time to go. Yeah, it hurts, but the longer you stay, it's just going to hurt more over time, and it's going to be more difficult. It's easy to cut a tie at the beginning. Give it a few months, you'll be fine. But once you've been with somebody for a long time and you've built a life together, and you're entangled in so many ways, it feels like an impossible bond to cut, or it might feel like an impossible bond to cut. And that's the position you don't want to be in.